Welcome to an Aries and Pisces walk into a coffee shop, the podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Brigitte, she, her.
And I'm Tiffany, she, her. This is a podcast where two friends let go of perfectionism and talk unedited.
Hello.
Hello.
It is a pleasure to see you today.
It's really good to see you in your vibrant hair.
Oh, God. This morning, I realized that, oh my God, did I accidentally manifest the, tone that my hair was going to be? Because for this month in my weekly reviews, I chose the strawberry as my emoji. And I was like, oh my God, now I'm a strawberry.
I love it.
Because I didn't necessarily want to be a strawberry, but
yeah, you mentioned that,
here
but
we
weirdly, strawberry's been popping up randomly because you talked about this hair color reminding you of a strawberry, and now I know that you picked the strawberry emoji. And I kid you not, just the other day, a mutual friend messaged me and was like, I'm redoing my bathroom, and it was all strawberry stuff.
Oh my God.
They're like, what do you like? But everything had a strawberry on it, so it was just variations of strawberries.
That's cute. I love strawberries.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I just wasn't expecting this for me.
I mean, understandable.
Yeah, but it's really funny that because I was literally leaning into, Brienne had sent out a newsletter whenever the strawberry moon was. Was that in May or
I'm not sure.
or
I'm
June?
not
I'm
not the best at all the different types of moons.
Yeah, I'm not either.
I
But
know their
it
phases
was
typically, but not their special names until I look it up. But yes, I know about a strawberry moon as a thing.
So there's a strawberry moon sometime earlier this year, and as of right now, we are mid-August. And I had told her okay, so in the email that she sent, it was about the strawberry moon, and she was talking about savoring things. And that is the kind of theme I was working with more recently, now. And so trying to savor the things in my life that I like, the little joys and things like that. And really hold on to those instead of the darker, depressive things.
Yep.
And I told her that I was somehow then for me, I think the association with the strawberry came up, and I had kind of that's why I picked the strawberry this month and was just leaning into that, and with the savoring. And I just thought it was interesting that was a theme of earlier in the year, but I was ready for it now. And then a few weeks into it, I was like, oh my God, I got accidental strawberry hair. Don't know what to go along with it.
Yeah, just to really lean into the be present, enjoy what you got. Strawberries are delicious. Oh, I love that as a messaging, though. Savor. There is a tarot card. Actually, from that same deck that I mentioned to you earlier, I think last week.
The cozy one.
Yeah, I always mess up the order of the name. I think it's called Enchanted Forest Tarot. There's another card that my friend had pulled for me before where it's this deck's version of the Hangman card, but it's called something different. And I can't remember if it's called Savor or if that's just a key word in the guidebook. But it's it's a figure trapped in amber, like a honey colored amber. And the whole guidebook talks about slowing down, shifting your perspective and savoring the moment and just like being, did you hear that?
Is that a storm?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
It's been very gloomy all day, but that was the first good
You're so
peal of
pleased.
thunder. I'm so happy.
We
I
have had
love
like
storms.
oh my God, we had some like really intense ones this weekend that
My mom was
I
telling
could
me.
talk about, but yeah. Ugh. It was
Yeah.
right in the middle of when we were doing my hair too.
Oh, wow. Okay, so
Like,
yeah, this weekend has been beautiful here in
oh,
Illinois, but we're just now starting to get some of the storms that I think that are going to be similar to what my mom was talking about
well,
happening
hopefully
in.
you don't have a tornado.
That's what my sister was, who's in Pennsylvania, was driving in one of those storms. And so I did get a little nervous, but I don't have to go anywhere. So I'm okay being inside with the storm.
Okay.
Oh, that sounds really good. Savoring. And so, yeah, the
Yes.
card is all about savoring. And it came to me at a time where I was feeling really stagnant and stuck. And it felt really nice to have that perspective shift of like, oh, here's a figure trapped in amber. But instead of it feeling claustrophobic and like nothing's happening, it was talking about how much potential there can be with staying present in that savoring mindset, because all things have to pass at some point. So this is like a phase
Yeah.
of being still. And it reminded me a lot of like my forever lesson, which is surrender, because I hate that.
Yes.
But it comes back to me over and over and over again in so many ways.
Oh, okay. I think that I'm needing this messaging because like I am in like a really weird phase.
Mm-hmm.
And I know like we've kind of like talked about it and I've like sent you some other things. The most recent thing, I was also like thinking about it this morning. I've been crying so much also too, and it's like the also like body pain is like off the charts. I'm like crying. I'm like, what is going on? It's big. It's just like big things. And then
Mm-hmm.
also that I don't think we talked about it on here, but I think we talked about it after we recorded one of these and you gave me the word derealization.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then I was like, oh shit. And then I Googled it and then that's when it made me think I have been singing that Bo Burnham song like nonstop. That funny feeling because he literally says like Googling derealization, hating what you find.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh my God, that's exactly what I did. So I've just
Oh,
been
the
like
human
singing that.
experience.
So it's like, yeah, that is such like a weird experience, too. But then I was thinking about this morning as I was like crying through my journaling. Maybe this is going to be like a really cathartic. I wonder if all the storm sounds are going to like come through the audio.
I'm enjoying it, but I can mute myself if it's distracting.
No, I think it's kind of cozy because like it's like sprinkling here, but it's not like storming. So I think like storming from afar feels better to me.
Mm-hmm.
um so yeah, so then I was like, how much of this do I want to like try to talk about right
Mm,
now while I feel like I'm in like the thick of it?
right.
Because it just feels so like up in the air.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like I don't know like what's where. Like I see pieces of things, like, but I can't like make sense of it. I don't know.
Yes.
But then that idea of like surrendering to this present moment
Mm-hmm.
when all of me like in this present moment is just like no, like there's something else, like something is happening and like just help me get there.
Mm,
Like I just want to know what it is. I want to know where I'm going. I want to like,
mm-hmm.
but none of that is available. And also in our yoga session this week, Brienne offered me because I was bringing up this theme as well, and it was something about like like the yellow brick road
Mm-hmm.
in like The Wizard of Oz, and like, where are you going, like down this yellow brick road? And I'm like, I don't know. And she's like, well, what about like one yellow brick? Like, what about just like the
Mm-hmm.
next one? And I was like, no, I want the whole thing. Like, I want to see where I'm going. Like, what's down
And a
that
map
road?
to let you know
Yeah,
what's around
yeah,
the corner.
yeah. And I was like, just the thought of like the brick that I'm on, even,
Mm-hmm.
and then just like putting like one more out. It's feels, it feels hard. It feels hard to be in this present moment, which this is also wild because Tiffany, this is like what I've been working with for the past handful of months or whatever, is so much like working on being in the present moment and gratitude for everything that I have and all the little joys in
Mm-hmm.
my life. And I felt like I like got it and it was going great. And then all of a sudden, like, boom, I'm like, what? Like, I see all of this stuff that I've
Mm-hmm.
cultivated, that I've noticed. And now I'm just like, now what?
Mm. Okay. And now what?
What?
One of the things that you had mentioned was that you were seeing the things, but they didn't feel like they didn't feel the same.
Mm-hmm.
And my other thought as you were talking was something, and I can't remember who it was. I wrote it down. It was a conversation I was listening to. And now that I'm saying it out loud, I can hear her voice. And I think it was Dr. Hillary. Well, I think we mentioned like 2 or 3 times already.
Yeah.
But I think there was a point in a conversation I was listening to where, with such sweet earnestness, she said, "Thank goodness for my dissociation. I'm so
Mm-hmm.
grateful that I had that to protect me in a time when I needed protecting. And I don't need it all the time or in the same way, but thank goodness I had it." And
Mm-hmm.
that was like one of those like perspective shifting where I was like, oh, right. It was like a reminder I needed, particularly at the time, which is why I wrote it down, because with dissociation or derealization, sometimes those go hand in hand for me. Sometimes they're separate. But when they're happening, I'm so resistant and I want to fix it right now.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes that just makes it feel even worse.
Mm.
And I had this talk with another friend
Oh.
where did that hit?
I did. Yeah, do you want me to this just happened like yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing my journaling inside,
Mm-hmm.
and because it had like rained, everything outside was soaked, but it was still sun was coming in through the
Mm-hmm.
windows, and Chloe was laying on the floor in the sun, which is like ultimate. Like, this is when
Mm-hmm.
I know that like she is like living her best life, and she like flops
Oh.
upside down and she's like sunning her armpits, and like it's just,
Oh.
that's her best life. And I'm journaling and I like look up and I see that, and usually like that to me is like absolute top level immense joy, especially through everything challenging that like we've been with her. Like, to see her in that moment is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked and I saw it and I felt nothing.
Oh
And I
no.
just started like bawling. And then the like judgment, like, or whatever it was, came on
Mm-hmm.
top of it. And then it felt like my heart was breaking
Yeah.
because I didn't feel that. And, yeah.
The grief of knowing what you normally would have had,
Yeah.
but you weren't having it in that moment. And the judgment of like, I should be feeling
I think so.
differently.
I think that that is what is coming up a lot now.
Mm-hmm.
That is like, yeah, like I see all of these joys and I see all of these things in my life that even just like a few weeks ago were like, oh my God, I was so stoked about these things. And now I'm
Mm-hmm.
just like looking at them and just not feeling any of that.
That sounds horrible. And I hate that you're going through that. Like, that sounds really, really bad. But also, not to discount it, not to discount it at all. But I feel like, and you correct me if I'm wrong, there's a past version of you that would be in that and would not have noticed that you should have been noticing something.
Well, I think because I was also thinking about this today, that like it feels so different now. Like I think maybe I would have thought like this feels like a depressive episode, but it feels different than that. I think that like in the past, in depressive times, I didn't have that, like that foundation that I have now of all of the things in my life that I see and know and recognize and have cultivated and brought into my life, and all of the joys and like all of those things. I didn't know those things in my life back then. So it felt like I had nothing, and like there just was nothing. But now I'm like, I have it. I have all of these things. Why don't they feel like anything?
But you know that they have felt like something before.
Yes.
It does sound like a depressive episode. It's just, you have the cognitive awareness.
It's different.
Yeah, because you cultivated a cognitive awareness. So you are able to witness yourself in a way that you weren't witnessing yourself when you didn't have that. I think this is your very shitty spiral staircase moment. That depression can still happen, even when you're doing all the things. And we also know it doesn't last forever.
Right.
But that doesn't make it feel much better in the moment, in my opinion.
It still feels like it's forever, even though I know that
cognitive,
it's not.
Right? Like up here, we know that things aren't forever.
Yeah.
But in your body, does it feel like it might be?
Yes. Like that like dread.
Yes.
Feeling of like that. Yeah.
I know the dread. I really, really hate that you're in that Ooh. The image that just popped in my head is like the quicksand feeling, like your feet are getting kind of sucked down in it, even though you're doing the things to like move through. It's like pulling.
Is this weird if like thinking about that, it doesn't feel like it's starting to pull me down in like this way, like by my feet. It almost feels like I am laying horizontal on top of it. Ooh. And like just like moving across the top of it.
Oh.
Like that, like I know that it's there, but I'm not like, I can like see land, but it's nowhere I can get to
yet.
Right.
Okay. It sounds like you're doing a really good job.
Oh my God, thanks. It doesn't feel that way.
Of course it doesn't. But it sounds, and with that visual looks, like under the circumstances, you are in fact doing a pretty excellent job.
I did also think today that like, Brigitte, you are like getting out of bed. I'm getting out of bed. I'm doing all of the things that I normally do. And I think this is where like me now is like, okay, well, I'm doing all of the things, right? I'm doing my morning practice. I'm doing all of the things that I know that works. I have my like structure for my work day. I'm still showing up and doing doing stuff. And I'm still feeling awful. And like, I feel like I'm not getting anywhere. But what I reminded myself today was that in versions past, I would have not gotten out of bed. I would have gone back to bed. I would have gone to the couch. I would have not been showing up for myself. I wouldn't have been showing up for my business. I wouldn't have been showing up for you. Like and so to like remember that and to be like, okay, well, Bridget, like even though you're doing these things and you feel kind of like stagnant and like you're not making any progress or not, like you really are, like look at what you could be doing. And you're not doing that. Like you're still showing up despite feeling this way. And I'm still doing my gratitude and joy practice every single day, even though it doesn't feel like I can tap into some of the things some of the time. And that's also what's like really weird to me. Cause it's like I can have like a really great, absolutely great moment in the midst of the rest of it feeling like nothing.
Right.
Which is bizarre.
I think that so from the outside looking in, and also from the inside looking out, because I've definitely been there, that makes complete sense, because I think that, at least for me, one of my symptoms of, oh, the mental health thing is happening again, the downslide, or like I'm in a valley, is when I start noticing that my thinking gets very black and white. And I think there are times where, a lot of times, I'm not feeling what I'm not feeling. That to me says, well, then that's where I'm at. Like it's stagnant. That's where I should be. And it gets really confusing that I can hold both things at once, that I can have a really great day, even though I'm in a depressed episode for however long. And in fact, not quite to the degree you're describing, but I think that that's what's been so confusing to me this like past year, especially, but even before that, but I've been thinking about it more intentionally this past year of, okay, so when someone asks you how you are and they actually want to know, how do I tell them how I am?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
the majority of this year have not been doing good. Like crisis, internal screaming mode. And yet, objectively, I'm getting out of bed, and I'm even cooking meals, and I'm taking myself on my little walks, and like doing my things, showing up to my job, like similar to what you were saying, like, there's things I could be doing that I'm not, and instead I'm doing all of the things that I know work, or that I keep showing up for you, for me, for, my life. And yet that black and white thinking makes that feel really wobbly, because it's hard to know that you can, in fact, just have all of that at once. And I think part of it is, I think that is the foundation of the phrase that comes up between us a lot, which is the I'm feeling bad, so I must be doing bad. I think that's a glaring example of the black and white thinking, where it's just like, well, I feel bad, and so shouldn't I be rewarded with feeling good if I'm doing good? And because that's not happening, it's like, well, I must just be doing awful then. But it ain't true. You're doing a really good job. It just, you don't have access to that feeling right now. But that doesn't mean that you won't have access to it at all. I just had the image of like a tipping scale, where it's like right now it's like all the bad is getting weighted heavier than the good, but like the idea that eventually that can like shift back, because everything's always in flux, and like there's so much things changing that it can't be the same all the time. I'm so curious if, I don't know, somewhere down the line, when you feel like something has shifted, looking back at all your gratitude work and the things that you were doing. And I'm curious what a future version of you will be able to see in this present moment that you just don't have access to right now, because you're in the thick of it.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing to think about. And I I think I also like I think about that too, and I like want to know the answer. Like I want to know like what am I getting out of this? Like what am I needing to learn? Like what am I, right? Like I'm asking myself all of these questions, but I don't have the answers yet. And that is also frustrating because
Right,
I'm like I
because,
want to know right now.
well, do you think it's the if you knew right now, then it would be fixed and you cannot
Yes.
you wouldn't have to do it?
Yeah.
Because I do that all the time.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I know that trick. I do that too, where I'm like, if I can think my way out of this. If I
Yes.
just get
And
very
yes.
focused and break it down, then I don't have to do it or feel it because I can think my way out.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
God, do I know that one. I just journaled about that last night.
So if this is rewinding back to the Enneagram thing of
Oh.
we're thinking too much about the thing. And
Mm-hmm.
if I am right now in a period of like my feeling is like not on, like my feeling is weird, then what is it? Is it the doing? Is it doing? Is that the thing that like, you know,
I'm about to say something I don't think you'll like, but you let
God
me
damn
know what
it.
you think.
Yes. Yes. Come on.
Hearing you say that makes me think that not the reason, but the feeling being offline might, okay, if we're looking at a scale, right? Now we have a 3-point scale. You're
Okay.
doing all of the thinking and doing. I think
Mm.
it's the doing less and thinking less to feel more.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm gonna cry.
Yeah, I thought you wouldn't like it. Because there's obviously a reason you're not doing the feeling. Like you are a full human being with emotions, but I think there's some protective mechanism in there that's saying this is overwhelming. Let's just keep thinking and doing because we know how to do that.
Okay, yeah.
And it feels safe and comfy.
Shoot.
And I don't think you're
Oh,
doing anything wrong. Like
yeah.
thinking and doing is good. Like you're feeding yourself, you're getting up, you're showing up for your life. But there must be some stuff that's coming up on the feeling side that your nervous system says, you know what, that's too much. So let's
Mm,
protect you from it and shut it
mm,
down. But you can't live like that forever. But it
mhm.
sounds like maybe right now your nervous system thinks that you should.
I have two things.
Mm-hmm.
One, and we can definitely talk more about this, is that I listened to that We Can Do Hard Things podcast episode with Tracy,
Mm-hmm.
and it was, thank you so much for sending that to me. That might have been one of my favorite conversations I've ever listened to. She's amazing. I didn't know
Yeah.
her previously to this conversation. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely amazing. And then at the end of the episode, they played the full song, the
Mm-hmm.
full what is that song? Anyway, and I was listening to it right at the end of lunch today, so like literally right before this. And the song starts playing, and I knew that they were going to play the whole entire song, not just like a clip of it. And I just started bawling, everything. And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, wow, okay. And I just kept letting it go. I kept like letting it play. I didn't turn it off. I didn't question it. I just like let myself come out of my face.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so there's likely, I guess, some things in there that I'm not feeling, and I'm very curious about that. And also the other thing that came up was that this takes me back to like pre 2016, like before I came
Mm-hmm.
off of all of my medications. And like whereas like that part of my life was like very numb to
Mm-hmm.
feeling things. but I definitely like I didn't have any of the awareness around it that I do now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that was just strange that like that came to me. And that also was that point in time that was a huge turning point in my life
Mm-hmm.
where I completely just like changed literally like everything in my life.
And that was in 2016?
Yeah.
Interesting. A couple of things popped up. One of them is that I would argue you are, in fact, doing some feeling. You talked about having a good
Yeah.
cry sesh with Chloe, good cry sesh, and allowing yourself to have a cry sesh with that song.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a good balancing of the scales. And then the other thing that popped up is I was reading Channing Nicholas's astrological post about the recent Venus cazimi, because Venus is in retrograde right now. And we're in the halfway point. And one of the things that she wrote down was if you were wanting to go deeper with like what might be coming up right now, is looking back at the themes from this July and August of 2015, because that was the last time this type of astrology was happening in this sign. So Venus in Leo retrograde was 2015. And for me, I found some really strong themes between what was going on then for me and what has been coming up just recently for me right now. And I'm wondering what might have been happening to you in that summer period of 2015, because my thought is it probably was influencing why you ended up making that major shift just 1 year later.
That's really interesting because like for me, I almost like it's hard for me to remember pre that
Mm-hmm.
like summer of 2016 because excuse me. Yeah,
I
that was
also have
such
a hard time with like remembering. I had to use
yeah.
Facebook and then look back at my journals. Like I had to use
Oh.
material. So
Yeah, yeah,
that's what
yeah,
I
yeah,
did.
yeah.
Because when I read that, I was like 2015. I don't really, nothing came to mind when I thought,
Mm-hmm.
because it was just a number to me. And I was just like, I
Right.
don't even know where I was living. Like, I had to like think so
Yeah.
hard about it. And so then I like looked on Facebook and like just kind of like poked around at some of like what was going on that year. And then I busted out some old journals and started flipping through. I don't know what materials you might have, but social media helps me at least ground myself
Yeah.
a little bit to be like, oh, right. Like that's what I was up to.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember. I would have no journals. That was pre-journaling,
Mm-hmm.
Bridget. So yeah, I guess it would be whatever is on either like Facebook or Instagram. 2015 is I know where I was working. I was working at the shelter
Oh, okay.
and we adopted Zero in 2015.
Okay.
That's all. That's all I got.
I mean, those are really good data points to start with. Because I don't know about you, because like as soon as I get like a couple of things, then I'm like, oh, I remember sort like once I have like my memory jogged, I can kind of like remember how I felt more at that time. Even if I don't have a clear picture or like a thorough scope of
Yeah.
things, it at least helps. And for me, looking into the astrology like that, it was a thing that Chani gave me over like my years of following her, because she often will be like talking about the themes of a certain astrology, and she's like, yeah, and the last time this happened, it was around this time, so think about what you might be going through then. And it really helped me ground things in cycles and spiral staircase moments where I'm like, oh right, we're always just repeating things. Like collectively we're just all doing that, and then personally, how is that affecting me? And I think it's made the things feel less personal. Like it's less of a personal attack and just like, okay, cycles, right? Like I can get through this cycle because eventually things are going to shift and it has to change again.
Yeah. Oh my God. You know what I was thinking? Did I say this earlier today in this conversation about the hermit? Did I mention the hermit?
That was a private conversation we had.
Okay, so I was thinking it earlier when I was like, how much of this do I want to actually talk about? And I'll just say that like that the other day, like feeling like I am moving out of this like hermit cycle that has been like long term. And I was thinking in my brain that it was like 2019 to like now. But now you're making me wonder like, oh, was it more of that like 2015 like into 2016? Is it that like a bigger, like an even bigger like cycle of, because I'm just thinking about like the amount of things that I have like focused on in this whole entire time, and that I could say has been a gigantic like spiritual journey like for myself of like self-discovery and me. And yes, that I would have said that began in 2016, but maybe that was when things started changing. So probably 2015 like kicked it in. Saturn return also, I'm pretty sure, is what was going on
right
at that time,
because that would have been, yeah, that makes sense.
But now I'm wondering like, oh, is this like, do I look at it as this phase of like including all of that amount of time? And that to me seems to make a lot of sense of that, like all of the like work that I have done and all of the things that I've had to go through and like realize to like come to now where I feel a very distinct shift in my life coming out of that, like, I don't know if I've talked about this on here, but the like moving out of survival mode.
Right.
And into like, oh, I get to like live my life now. Like I don't have to survive anymore. And it feels like that. And that feels absolutely insane to be like, well, what even is life if not just trying to survive through? So maybe like,
oh, right. Because so long it was just surviving. So like, what does it look like not doing that?
Yeah. So long it was just like surviving. And then I went into this hermit mode and I was still surviving, but learning how to, right, like ease my nervous system and to get to this point where I just feel like I've reached this year of, okay, now it's time to like live life. And now I think also, I don't know, I'm like, well, wait a second, what does that even mean? Like,
interesting. You know what just popped in my head? And I'm so...
Are you researching over there?
I had to look up something. And I was right. I'm so curious. If you look into the journey of the major arcana in tarot.
Yeah, I Googled it the other day.
Right. Because yours, like, I've been in the hermit mode since 2015. And I'm like, that doesn't sound right.
Right.
And I looked and I'm like, isn't the hermit right before the Wheel of Fortune? And I wasn't 100% sure. And I just looked and it is. So my thought is, this makes so much sense because, like, as you were talking about, I've been in the hermit mode. I'm like, yeah, but I've seen you be like different archetypes. Like, I've watched you go through periods of like, the magician is one that pops up big time for me with you, because the magician is someone who has gone through a lot of the like spiritual stuff and then brings that into the world. And I've watched you do that in a way that's always been kind of mesmerizing to me because you're good at doing the ignition thing again. And the magician to me is very much like the balance of that, like, you know, inner wisdom, knowledge, like intangible things, and then using that to influence like the world, the alchemy of those two things, which we were just talking about the other day, like the chaos alchemy of just like making things happen in the world with what you know that's less tangible. And then I started thinking, well, if you feel like you're just now maybe coming out of the hermit mode, of course that's disorienting. Because, like, you just went through a whole life cycle. And all your life experience has told you that you have to survive. So it must feel so scary to be like, I don't have to survive, I can live. And they're like, no, we don't get to do that, because if you lose the focus on surviving, then you're gonna die. We know that's not true, but like, does your nervous system know that? Probably not. Because it's had more data to say disaster is gonna come than it's had data to say we got it.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Wow. First off, wow, like, thank you. I feel like I should be paying you for today's session. Um,
Wow. Thank you. What an honor and a privilege.
wow, talking about me in magician mode like that feels very, I feel honored to be seen in that way, because I think, sometimes that stuff for me isn't necessarily like consciously, I'm consciously going to share this thing that I've whatever because this and this. It's just like, no, it just feels like that's what I need to do, or like that's how it like has got to like that just happen. So that
But it
feels
didn't
very
just happen.
magical, right?
Yeah.
But like I remember the other day, Googling the like the archetypal, is that how you say that word?
Yeah.
Journey of the tarot, and like looking through that, and I was not finding what I was looking for online. And then I also was like, okay, well, if the wheel is next, I was just trying to like figure out then what to do with that. That still felt very like I was like, I don't, because then too I was like, well, does it make sense to say that I have been in like hermit mode for this long? Or maybe it is that thing of that like maybe hermit was like an overarching like big thing, but then like also moving through the other like cycles as well. Like that makes sense. So I don't know. It still feels like,
Well, yeah, because you've been doing a lot of the archetypal things from that deck, even just in this past year, like, because like the Fool's all about beginning and not being afraid of failure. And I mean, you quite literally did the bad art challenge to be a beginner and not worry about being good at something, just kind of taking the leap. And then a lot of your like joy practice always made me think of it felt very Venusian to me, like very warm and self-care oriented, which is very like Empress energy to me. Like she's like the nurturer of the tarot deck. But at the same time, you're doing all this structure and figuring out how to be in the world, which is the Emperor. Like you need both. You've been doing incredible boundary work, again, very Emperor. So it's not like I don't see you as like this like one facet. Like you've been a kaleidoscope of things.
yes. And this is definitely like a big turning point in my life.
Yep.
And I feel that, and I know it and I feel it. And that feels just wild.
Yeah. I mean, and that makes perfect sense for like the Wheel of Fortune, because like that card always comes up for me when I'm being either pessimistic or resistant. So it's a card that pops up for me that says the wheel's turning, like get with it or not, but it's happening. So like, yeah, you could, dig your heels in, but it's going to keep going and you're going to feel the friction point. And then on the flip side, it's like, yeah, things are always turning. Like, isn't that nice? Like flow. It's
right.
like what's up will come down and what's down will come up, and it's always going to be shifting.
Because
whether you like it or not.
If it wasn't, you know how fucking bored I'd get?
Mm-hmm. I do know that about you.
That's a great little nugget for my brain there to hold on to, that I just realized. That it, even like seasonally, because I've also been panicking that like I feel like winter is tomorrow and it's the end of the year. Like and I'm like, Bridget, like it's only the middle of August. Like,
yeah, you got time.
You've got time. Yeah, that's what I'm like, you're not running out of time. I feel like I'm running out of time. And that is interesting.
That sounds like a survival mode thing. That scarcity mindset of like, oh, we got to do something, has to happen, or else. I know the or else feeling a little too keenly.
I don't like that, but I loved that face that you just made after you said it. It was really good. It was really good.
Thank you. I don't know what it did.
It was no, this was good. You did this little thing with your mouth, and I was like, oh, that was the visual representation of exactly what you just said. Like, I felt it.
Okay, yeah. So my feelings came right out my face. Good.
Yes, and it was top notch.
Thank you.
10 out of 10.
Oh, being alive is so hard.
It is. But basically, if I may, what I'm hearing you say this whole time is that I'm doing a good job.
Yeah, that is what I'm telling you in a myriad of different ways. You are, in fact, doing not just a good job, but an excellent one.
Wow.
I just wish it felt better for you right now, more consistently, all the time.
Yeah. Isn't that a trip? Like, that's just...
A question to maybe ponder and end on is, I just had the phrase foreboding joy from Brene Brown pop in my head, where she describes this reflex we have of dampening down our joy because it's scary to be vulnerable, to feel that, to be enthusiastic or hopeful about something. So our reflex is to minimize it or dampen it somehow so that it feels less scary, less exposing.
Oh.
And for me, that is something I've struggled with a lot. And just the other day, someone asked me about my day, and objectively, it was a really good day. And I felt myself resist saying I had a really good day because it felt dangerous, like I was going to jinx it or something. Because I've also been having a really hard time. And like, I have a lot of like background stuff, and it felt reflexive for me to be like, I had a really nice day, but, and I was like, no, there is no but. I had a really nice day.
Yeah.
And then like forced myself to list why it was a nice day instead. And it was very uncomfortable. And I was surprised that it was uncomfortable because I was describing all really nice things that in the moment I was enjoying a lot, but then on reflection and talking about it, it felt scary to admit that. And I'm curious for you to consider that and get back to me on what you think about that concept.
Yeah, I think I'd like to listen to her talk about that, because as you were saying that and then talking about it, I was like, oh, is that not exactly what's happening now? I started like working so deeply with this like joy practice, and I like started realizing like that I have an amazing life, and I like really felt it. And I was like, this is bonkers, wild, amazing. Like was that lightning? There was just like a big flash.
Maybe. We're still having a storm. It was raining, but it's starting to get a little bit lighter now, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't lightning as well.
Magic. So yeah, so I started feeling all of these things. And then now all of a sudden I'm looking around and like, wait, I'm not feeling those things.
Oh, like your nervous system got too afraid of it and swung real hard in the other direction. Maybe. Like, I think that would make sense. That doesn't make it any easier, but it does make a sense.
I'll take it.
So maybe this is just your hard pendulum swing in the opposite direction, but eventually you'll start finding that middle ground where you're able to access like, yeah, this is hard and there's still things coming up and gonna happen. And yet you can have this.
Yeah. I have also been, this feels like a piece of it too. I have been working with the phrase like yes and instead of like yes but.
Oh.
So like how you were describing, like, I had a really great day, but I'm going through a really hard time. Well, instead of that, it's like, oh, I had a really great day and I am going through a really hard time. It's like you're not like negating anything. Like it's the all of it.
Yep, it's the black and white thinking again. It has to be good or it has to be bad. I can't have both.
Yeah, so I am working on the and of it all, and that is uncomfortable.
Oh, yes.
Even just to write it down in like a sentence.
Yeah, because it's inherently kind of dissonant, right? Like they seem opposite, so you can't or shouldn't or whatever have both, but literally the human existence. Like, actually, to get very visceral, I was just reading a book where there was a birth scene, and like think about the horrendous like terror of having your body go through a birth process, and then the absolute joy of like you brought this human life into the world and you get to like nurture it and watch this whole other human soul develop. Like if that isn't just both hands.
Yeah.
It's like, you survived, you have a being, you made this. Like, this is incredible. Also, think of all the things that you had to go through just now to have that happen. I'm like, oh, right. Yeah, it's all just hard and beautiful and incredible and heartbreaking. Expanding. You really have to be expansive to be able to hold all of that.
Yeah, I have this thing written on here. I'm not sure if I've said that this one yet, but it says resistance question mark, and then for me to just remember like I'm changing. Because like if there like you can't have resistance if something's not happening. And so yeah, that's my like thing from therapy to remember, like whenever I start feeling that way, to remind myself that I'm changing, things are happening. Like it doesn't mean that I'm stuck or stagnant. It actually means things are happening.
That's a really beautiful reminder to have, which I needed for myself as well. Big time.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. Oh, thank you for this. Wow.
My honor.
Wow.